Hi, George Freestone back again with the 10th installment in the series of YouTube chapters or serial editions of our baseball journey, the trips by my wife Carol and myself to the various major league ballparks around the US and Canada. And this installment is to Nationals Park in Washington, D.C. And we see an unusual statue behind me. It's a tribute to a pitcher from the early 1900s for the Washington Club, a pitcher who still has a record that I think is in place today. His name is Walter Johnson. He's also known as the Big Train. And this particular statue is a little bit unusual when you first look at it. It has several arms and several baseballs coming out of it. The sculptor, whose name is Omri Amrani, called it an array of baseballs coming out of many arms. Walter was a pitcher, and the record that still stands today, I think, is 110 shutouts over his 21-year career, which was from 1907 to 1927. So this is what I thought I'd start with when we talked about this 2014 trip. On this trip, we drove down to Washington, D.C., enjoyed a stay there and the game against the LA Dodgers. And again, for those of you who recall, the Dodgers are my father's favorite baseball team against the Washington Nationals, of course, at National Stadium. So, with that, I think I'm going to start sharing and call up the slide that we're going to talk from. And while we do that, I think I'm also going to align myself a little bit more to the center of the screen. Okay. This particular game, we were very fortunate. As the first bullet indicates, we had a chance to see the noteworthy Stephen Strasburg pitch. And not only did we see him pitch, he lasted 7 1/3 innings and won the game. It was a tight game. The Nationals beat the Dodgers 3-2, as you see in the lower right of this particular slide. And again, that's a link that will take you to the very informative box score that you have here. More data than you want to know about that particular game. But in each of these slides, this lower right box is a link to the box score that gives you the details for the game. But Stephen won, and in this first picture that you see of Stephen, you see a Dodger noteworthy character from the past, Davy Lopes, looking on. He was the first base coach at the time. Now, in this particular game, it rained, and so there were at least one significant delay. I can't remember if there were more, but what was noteworthy is Carol and we listened to a audiobook from an iPod with one each sharing an earbud as we were trying to listen to the book and spend some time while it cleared up so that they could get the game in. And they did indeed get the full game in. Another link that I have here is to photos from the game. We have several that I'm going to be talking about here. I've already talked about these two with regard to Stephen Strasburg. Um, but you can go to this link and it'll take you to a Shutterfly album that will share with you many of the other pictures that I have available from the game. So please take a look at both of those links if you would. Many teams, ballparks, have characters that in the middle of one of the innings will run around the perimeter of the field and try and run a race. And many times they'll ask somebody to predict who's going to win. In this particular instance, um, they have presidents that run at Nationals Park, not a real surprise. Um, in Milwaukee, when we get there, you'll see that they have sausages that run. But here they have presidents, and they had George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Abe Lincoln, and Teddy Roosevelt run the race. And in this case, sorry about that, hit the wrong button. Over on the far left, our friend Abe Lincoln won the race. But from some of our waltzes around Washington, we captured a sign from Ford's Theater, which is where Lincoln ultimately lost. Now, I already gave you a preliminary view of the Walter Johnson statue. A picture of that is also here in the center of this particular slide. Now, one of my favorite pictures, we actually were pretty close to the field for this particular game, but one of my favorite pictures, because of that, we had a chance to actually see some of the faces of the players a little bit more clearly. This is our friend Yasiel Puig, and as he was walking back to the Dodger dugout, and we were very close to the Dodger dugout, you can see that he doesn't look too happy. And so that's a very dejected Yasiel Puig. And we will see Mr. Puig again in our travels, particularly at Anaheim, when he was playing for Cleveland, but we'll have a chance to see him again. So that's one of my favorite pictures of expressions on some of the players. Now, while in Washington, of course, we could see many of the museums. And one of the unusual museums that we saw was and I'm going to move this little image of me out of the way here, because we went to the Spy Museum in Washington, D.C., and one of the highlights of the Spy Museum in the upper right was the Enigma machine. And the Enigma machine was a cipher machine used by the Germans in World War II to try and encode their communications so that they would remain obscured to everyone except those that they wanted to read the message. Okay, so other things that we did while we were in DC, of course, walk past the Capitol. You can see that here. We also we had never been before to the Library of Congress. Several pictures in this album capture that particular visit. This happens to be right there in the center right of this slide, the main reading room at the Library of Congress. We did check out a couple of the Smithsonian's. This building in the upper left, I think, is the Arts and Industry Building, which is not the oldest, but is the second oldest Smithsonian in Washington, D.C. I think the oldest is also a red brick building called the Castle. But what we also saw at some of the Smithsonian's we saw this statue of Casey Stengel, the Mets manager, my hero, at the one of the Smithsonian's that we visited. And here you can see one of our ancestors in an image of one of our ancestors at the Smithsonian as well. We walked past the Supreme Court, and this is the facade of the front of that particular building as well. Okay, we ate well, and we've visited this chain in a couple of different cities. I know in Baltimore as well as here in DC, the Oceanaire, and maybe also in Cleveland, I forget. But at any rate, you can see quite a nice meal, a seafood meal at the Oceanaire. Okay, one of my favorite charismatic players for, at this point, the Washington Nationals. He went on to play also for the Philadelphia Phils, but was Jason Worth. Now, Jason and myself posed here. That's actually a poster of Jason on the far left corner there. He's, I think, taller than it appears in that particular image of myself and Jason. And you see two images of Jason here, both, I think, at second base, one a little bit more jubilant than the other. Now, Jason, for those of you who follow racehorse competitions, know that he has become the owner of a significant horse called Dornoch. And Dornoch, I think, competed in at least the Belmont, where he won in 2024. And here you can see a jubilant Jason Worth in his new role as a horse owner and a race horse owner, hoisting the trophy there at Belmont. Okay, I think I've covered most of the photographs that we have here. It was a delightful game. The only one that I think I haven't touched on is the Metro, which is the subway in DC, has quite interesting stations, and you can see some of the architecture here. We used the Metro a lot to get around town while we were on this visit. Beautiful park, Nationals Park. Enjoyed the visit very much. We were a couple of blocks away from the park to the hotel where we were staying. And stay tuned as we move from here to the city of Pittsburgh, where we saw the Pirates play. And that will be in our next installment. Okay? Many thanks for your attention. We look forward to your being with us for our next installment.